Would you say Joe Biden is a socialist or a communist?
He's neither. He's an United States American president. He's neither.
What would you classify him as?
I will classify him as an American president who's trying to do the best he can for all Americans.
And is he doing that?
As of this moment, he is.
You think Joe Biden is more like a socialistic or communist?
Probably both.
Why?
His policies.
Can you tell me more about those policies?
So, like, Marxism is a big part of communism, and Marxism pits one group against another group, and his policies do that. You know, there's like an oppressed group and a non-oppressed group, and you pit people together. That's how he views the world.
What are some of the things that you think the Biden administration has failed to do?
Oh, God. Open borders. Afghanistan was a disgrace and a humiliation for this country. And and the Chinese. He's obviously in bed with the Chinese. He's on his knees in front of President Xi of China, and he's not praying.
Would you say Joe Biden is more socialistic or communist?
Well, socialism turns into communism eventually. But I think he wants to be socialist, but sometimes he's a communist. So,
can you elaborate on how he has been a communist?
Well, a federal vaccine mandate that fired healthcare workers that fought against the pandemic on the front lines and not caring what happened to them, and now depleting our healthcare system to where they can't fight against viruses and disease, and mothers and fathers of school children, you know, attacking them, selling them, labeling them domestic terrorists because they care about their kids. I mean, those are ways a communist leader leads.
Would you say Joe Biden is a socialist or a communist?
Socialist, communist. And you know what's going on with Hunter Biden's laptop. I mean, can you imagine if it was President Trump's son, Donald Jr., who was making deals with the Chinese? What the hell would be going on?
What are some of those socialistic policies?
Welfare is one of them. In the Soviet Union, everybody was on welfare. Nothing got done.
Would you say Joe Biden is a socialist or a communist?
I would say he's a puppet. And I don't think he has any particular political ideology. I think he just does what people tell him to do.
Who is he a puppet of?
Hard to say. There's suspicions there, but
What are those like top suspicions?
people in the previous Democratic administration.
Would you say Joe Biden is more of a socialist or a communist?
More of a socialist.
What are some of those socialistic policies?
I think in particular the environmental stuff, shutting down the Keystone XL pipeline, killing all those jobs. But he wants to get rid of gasoline cars by 2030 or 2035.
Why?
Because he thinks that CO2 emissions are bad for the environment, and he just wants to keep everybody dependent on the government all the time. And I think that's a problem.
In speaking to President Trump over the last couple of months, I've realized this guy is laser focused and locked on. He's ready to go for 2024. He has to win this. It's about the future of humanity. If we let these subhumanoids continue to control and destroy our country, we're in real trouble. And, then our only hope will be God Almighty. He'll have to come down and smite these people like he did in Sodom and Gomorrah.
What are some of the things that you think would hold Trump back from winning?
I have no idea. Even if he were convicted, of some kind of election fraud, he can still run. You can be a felon and run for the United States, President of the United States.
And we need to realize that the enemy isn't each other. It's the people, the leaders of this world and of our government.
Who are those leaders?
It's the big pharma, the big tech, the World Economic Forum, the World Health Organization.
You're saying like all these organizations all have the same people kind of controlling them?
Not the same people controlling them, but they all have the globalist agenda in mind. And I do think there is a globalist cabal of leaders that do kind of cooperate and conspire together to ultimately create a new world order. They talk about this stuff out loud. It's an open conspiracy.
What is their agenda?
The Great Reset, a one world government with total control and not where you don't have your sovereignty or you don't have rights and you don't have liberty and freedom.
It's got to stop now. Now they're going after our children and mutilating our children. To hell with that. These people got to be stopped. And it's time for weak Christians and weak people of faith and weak people of any religion, weak conservatives, weak Republicans to all start getting tough on these people. So, we've got to make sure he gets elected. Now they're going to try to steal the election from us again.
How do you think they'll try to do that?
Well, they'll do that mostly with the electronic machines. I was listening to Mike Lindell earlier, and he said we need to take all the electronic voting machines in the country, melt them down, and turn them into prison bars. And he's right. That's a great analogy, a great metaphor. These people are stealing our elections in every country. They just stole the election in Brazil from Bolsonaro and put a criminal in there, a felon. Guy who was in a prison until recently. They're going to go after Oban in Hungary. He's another good man and a good leader. And Bukele in El Salvador has just perp walked 40,000 members of MS-13 and other gangs into a prison in their boxer shorts. He's not messing around. That'll help their economy tremendously. It'll be a Trump-like conversion in El Salvador, which is so important because they've been exporting their subhumanoid gang members up here to our country and ruining it.
What are some things that Joe Biden has done that you don't like?
Open up the border on day one, allowing the fentanyl crisis to happen. Spending trillions of dollars, creating inflation.
This is my brick wall suit, and that's why they call me Brick Suit, and it signifies my support for strong border barriers, specifically a border fence between the United States and Mexico.
What is something that Joe Biden has done you don't really like?
President Trump had built much of the wall that was requested, and much more was ready to be built. The materials were right there at the border. The contracts were already signed. The workers were already working on it. And when Biden came in, on one of the first things he did in that first few days is he stopped all construction. But that doesn't mean Americans stopped paying for it. We'd already bought all the materials. We were already paying all the contractors, and we continued to pay them millions of dollars a day to do nothing, and no more wall fencing was constructed.
Why did Biden stop that?
I think really Biden just decided when he came in, I'm going to stop everything that President Trump did, no matter if it was good or made sense for America or if it was just something that was a Republican-Democrat issue.
Can you tell me a little bit more about your shirt?
I have this shirt because Donald Trump has proven to the United States of America and the world that he's a communist, number one, that he's an insurrectionist, number two. I cannot understand how sane Americans who have seen the insurrection, who have seen the storming of the United States Capitol, I cannot understand how sane Americans are still supporting Donald J. Trump. It's really disgusting. As a veteran and as a retired police officer, I find it disgusting.
What would you do if he won the 2024 campaign?
Well, I would actually leave the country because it would show that America has lost their damn mind.
What are some of the things that the Biden administration has failed to do?
I can't think of anything they have failed to do.
I have my disagreements with Trump, but I think he's a good entertainer. And
what are some of your disagreements that you have with Trump?
I don't like his focus on the 2020 election. I don't think it was stolen. I know it wasn't stolen.
Why?
Because the courts threw everything out. It was never really proven. Everybody says they have all this proof, but it was never released to the public. I think it was very misleading how that all went.
What do you think actually happened?
I think what happened is Republicans didn't mobilize enough to do vote by mail procedures because I think the Democrats really outpace us in that.
We got to get back to the paper ballots, ID required, signature required, all that kind of stuff to make sure it's not a big problem. The left makes us think it's a big problem to ask somebody for their ID. You go to the store and you use a charge card, you get asked for your ID sometimes. You want to order a drink and you get proofed. So stop with the nonsense about voter ID as voter suppression. It's nonsense. Nobody believes it.
What are some of the things that might hold Trump back from winning the next election?
Widespread cheating from the Democrats, even wider spread than before. And an inability of the Republican Party to adapt to voting methods that are in use in certain states, such as ballot harvesting, early in-person voting, mail-in balloting, ballot drop boxes, and things like that are illegal in certain states that the Republicans typically have not done as well in. We need to adopt those tactics in the states where that's legal.
Well, how do you feel about us donating another $400 million to Ukraine?
No, it's got to be stopped. Look, I was in favor of going into Ukraine to stop Putin from advancing into Eastern Europe, which he was going to plan to do. But that should have been over in 5 days. When Biden canceled all of NATO, all of our allied countries wanted to send in MiGs from Poland. in the first few days. And he canceled it, Biden, for some unexpected reason, like he's in bed with the Chinese and the Russians. So if he had gone in there and sent the planes in, he would have pushed Putin's troops back and it would all be over in a few days. Now I'm not in favor of this. It's the biggest money laundering operation in the world. What they're doing is they're sending arms to Ukraine, and then it's doubling back, and then they're sending it to Syria and Yemen and all the other hotspots where they want to stir up more trouble for this country. And the money is not reaching, some of the money is reaching Zelensky, so he keeps his mouth shut because he gets a little. But all the rest of the money is coming back into this country to the Democratic National Party and to Planned Parenthood and to the open borders people. And so they're stealing money from the U.S. taxpayer, calling it for Ukraine, and then using it. That's what Democrats always do.
How do you feel about that $400 million he just donated to Ukraine?
I don't agree with this open-ended bill. He said we have to support it as long as it takes. I support the Ukrainian people. I support their sovereignty, but it's not a war that directly affects us. We knew there's other wars happening that's possibly can happen with Taiwan. There's a lot of war elements happening right now, and we're going to be overextended, and we're spending all this money, and we're putting our nose where something it really doesn't affect us directly here as a nation.
How do you feel about Joe Biden giving the Ukraine another $400 million?
$400 million is a drop in a bucket compared to what we've given. We've given them an incredible amount of money. There's a tremendous tragedy in Ukraine. I don't want to pretend that it's not. It's a tremendous human tragedy for Ukrainians and for Russians alike. We've put a lot of money in there. There's no good resolution at the current time. Even if the war were to end, we would continue to send hundreds of billions of dollars there. And at this point, it doesn't look like there's an end in sight. So it's a very difficult question. There's no easy solution. But the problem is that we got there because of the laxity and the perceived weakness of the Biden administration. Under Trump, Russia did not have any aggressive moves. Under Biden, after they saw our weakness in Afghanistan, they did. And I believe there's a direct correlation there.
And how do you feel about us just donating another $400 billion to Ukraine?
I think it's important to protect allies, certainly. I'm not for cutting any aid to Ukraine, but I am in full support of auditing Ukraine, the funds going to Ukraine. I think that's an important thing to do, just in the name of fiscal responsibility.
What do you think about Biden donating that $400 million to Ukraine?
I didn't think I could live to see the day that American people would support someone like a Putin, who is a real communist, over someone fighting for their freedom. So $400 million, that's peanuts. I would give $800 million for anyone who's fighting against a real communist dictator.
Is there anything Joe Biden has done that you actually like?
He's divided Americans. He's spent billions, trillions of dollars. He's raised inflation. No, I don't know. He has hired the most incompetent White House press secretary in the history of forever, and I'd like to thank him for exposing how horrible the idea of diversity hiring is for diversity's sake. We should be a meritocracy.
Can you give me some examples of that?
Well, you mean like Karine Jean-Pierre? I mean, I think she's very bad at her job, and they constantly tout other aspects about her besides her job performance that basically they would tout as qualifications. And we have this many people who are X category, and we have this many people who are Y category. But not that we have this many people who can do the job well, or this many people who are this qualified for other reasons. It's just aspects of them are their qualifications, not their abilities.
What are some of the things that Joe Biden has done that you don't really like?
Inflation, open border, crime, Afghanistan pullout. I mean, just making a mockery of our country. Falling down stairs, falling off bikes. His son's a criminal. Just a lot of bad stuff. Yeah.
Is there anything that he's done that you actually like?
No. Nope, not one thing.
Can you finish the sentence? Two men getting married is...
Unnatural.
Two men getting married is...
You can do whatever you want. I'm a Christian. I don't necessarily agree with it.
Two men getting married is...
Legal in America.
Two men getting married is...
Not a big deal.
Two men getting married is...
I'm not for that at all. I'm not that liberal.
Why?
Because you cannot appropriate. Two men cannot appropriate. I'd rather have two sane gay men adopting as opposed to crackhead parents.
Two men getting married is...
Not marriage. Traditionally, marriage is between a man and a woman. It's something else. It's not marriage.
Do you think two gay men should have the same rights as a heterosexual couple?
What do you mean by rights?
Like just human rights.
What are human rights?
Two men getting married is.
That's a sin. I mean, look, I have nothing against homosexuals, but, as long as I have a live and let live policy and philosophy. Like, if you want, I don't care who you want to sleep with, just say out of my face about it. Once you get up in my grill and you're a homosexual and you want to start telling me how my kids are going to be educated in school, that's where I draw the line. Then the gloves come off and we're not going to have a good time.